So I'm Kevin McLeod, Policy Director for the League of American Bicyclists. I'm just a facilitator here today, joined by a great panel from Pittsburgh. And I will be running things over here, except when they need to go through their slides. So I'll hand it off to you to introduce yourself.
Sounds good. Hey everybody, good afternoon. My name is Boerer. I'm the Advocacy Director of Bike Pittsburgh. Coming from the advocacy standpoint of this panel, we're going to have a couple brief presentations, but really want this to be a conversation, much more of a conversation than some of the other panels that you might have been at. So in short, we're always, as advocates, we're always looking for new ways to, to get the word out about our mission, to build community, to help sort of raise awareness about the things we're doing. And we've often used a lot of things like tech, like new tech, to help with that. For instance, early on, we've done some things with like crowdsourcing maps before Google Maps existed. Just before the pandemic, we were partnered with a DC-based app called Our Streets, where people can crowdsource problematic locations using the ease of an app to then submit to 311 to help raise awareness with the city. We found these kinds of things really useful for our advocate network. It gives people something to do. It gives people some type of, they feel like they're contributing to something bigger, which, they are. So anyway, with that said, I'm here to facilitate a conversation with two local Pittsburgh startups, Dashcam for your bike and velo.ai. They're here, they've built some tools. They're helping to make roads safer for bicyclists. Both companies were funded by local veterans of the autonomous vehicle industry. We have a very burgeoning autonomous vehicle industry in Pittsburgh, if you don't know that already, due to Carnegie Mellon University and the National Robotics Institute. So there's a really big industry of self-driving vehicles. Real brief, I'm going to give a brief introduction and then hand it over to them. Dashcam for your bike. It's a new app that turns your smartphone into a dash cam, allowing bike riders to use their smartphone to capture rides without needing any additional hardware. You can literally run the app, and if you see something you want to report, you just touch the app and then go back later and report it. And Armin will tell you a bit more about that in a second. Velo.ai is developing Copilot. It's an AI-powered bike light that integrates AV tech to keep bicyclists safe on the road. So I'm here with the founder and CEO of Dashcam for your bike, Armin Samii, and Alison Treaster, the chief of staff from velo.ai. And with that, we're going to pass it to Armin first.
Okay, great. Hi, everyone. Armin Samii, Dashcam for your bike, and I've got a few slides to go over what our company does and what we've done in Pittsburgh. I'll keep it very brief, just so we can keep the conversation going. So that's a photo of what it looks like. You just mount a phone on your handlebars. Here's one of the mounts, and it just uses your smartphone's camera to record your rides. You can get these for $25 on Amazon, or you can find me. I've got 5 free ones throughout this conference, so come find me and you might be able to score one. Can we get the next slide, please?
Yeah, hopefully.
There's 2 videos here, but with the state of the internet, I don't know if it'll load. Before you hit this first one, there is just a quick content warning. There's not a collision here. This is me biking and I slam on my brakes, but it looks like there's a slight collision. It's at 2 miles an hour. If you don't want to look, it's 10 seconds. I'll tell you when it's over. So here's me biking on a bike lane. The quality of is way better than you see here. This is a streaming quality. But this car turns across. He passes me, so he knows that I'm there, and then just taps me. So this is why most people use the app, is in case there's a collision, you want video evidence of what happened, capture the license plate, and so on. But what we found in Pittsburgh is actually the more useful thing is all of the days you're not getting hit. Because hopefully that's most days that you're riding, you're not getting hit. But you do encounter other things, which is the second video. And one of the things in Pittsburgh Specifically, and I assume most cities, certainly DC, is vehicles parking in the bike lane. So we have very few protected bike lanes that are truly protected with concrete. So, here's like, if everyone's parking in the bike lane for just a minute, the bike lane's just always blocked. And in the direction I'm going, it's not too bad because I'm going with traffic. But this is a two-way cycle track and there's cars coming, bikes coming the other way, you have to bike into oncoming traffic to get over it. So that was like 4 in 2 blocks or something. And I have a video from DC where I think I got 16 on 14th Street in 3 blocks. So just bananas. That was 2 days ago. Can we get to yeah, right. This was Saturday night. So Saturday night was just like all delivery drivers in there. So people want to be able to report these things to 311, but they don't because 311 tends to be kind of hard to use. Every city is different. They have different apps. But in Pittsburgh, if you want to report one of those cars in the bike lane, on average, it'll take you 4 minutes with the Pittsburgh app. You have to get off your bike, take a photo, fill out a complex form, hit submit, get back on your bike and go. So we try to make that a lot easier. We can go to the next slide and play one last video.
Yeah, 3 slides.
So while I'll just describe it. So you already have all of the footage. We know your GPS location when you rode. And what you do is you tap the screen in the ride, and then you can find those moments later, and you can go back and do whatever you want with them, whether that's report to 311, or if you saw your friend Jimmy and you're like, hey, Jimmy, here's a photo of you. I saw you while riding. You can send that off. So you just tap, like with one button, you say, send to Pittsburgh 311, you select car parked in bike lane and send. And it makes it really, really fast, about 3 to 5 seconds to send a 311 report, which means on an average ride, it's super easy. In a minute, you can send 10, 15 reports. And so what the city does with all that data, and now if I can switch to the tab, and I'll do a quick interactive. So what you can do is, here's a map of all of the potholes in the city of Pittsburgh that have been reported with the app. You can see the hotspots are where people have reported a little bit more. And since you're in control, can you hit pothole and change that and click car parked in bike lane as well? You can see that there's a lot more reports of cars parked in bike lane. Can you zoom in here? Sorry to make you control all this, guys. But zoom in until you can see the individual reports. Each of these cars is a car parked in a bike lane. So the city saw, right? It's a parking lane. It's just a parking lane at this point. So Bike PGH has been asking for concrete here for 9, 10 years. And we finally got $100,000 dedicated to 150 to building concrete protection on this bike lane, mostly thanks to Bike PGH, but they credit in part the advocates who made thousands of 311 reports on that stretch saying like, we need a solution here. So 311 data can make change if it's just easy enough to use that the city can act on that. So that's the end of my section. And then I want to introduce Alison from
Hi, everyone. I'm Alison Treaster. I'm the Chief of Staff for velo.ai. And we are a bike tech startup, a robotics company that was founded in 2022 using smart sensor technology to help protect vulnerable road users. We can just kind of cruise through just in case these lag a minute. Okay, perfect. So our founder, Dr. Clark Haynes, is a roboticist and came from the autonomous vehicle industry and is also a lifelong bike commuter. And what he was finding is that the trajectory for autonomous vehicles to commercialize is a long road ahead of us. And what he found is, or what he believed, is that that technology could be applied for bike safety today. And so how can we leverage that technology to make roads safer for everyone? And in that case, we decided to apply this to bicycles. And so Copilot, which you'll see here, I was on the cherry blossom ride this morning, and I know a couple of people said, wow, that's a gigantic bike light. So this is the prototype version of Copilot. It's very big, it's heavy. I promise you this is not the version we're going to be selling. This is a mock-up of the commercial product. So it's about the size of a deck of cards. It'll be able to mount in multiple places on your bike. And essentially what it's doing is taking AI technology and constantly sensing the road. And the next slide might take a little while, so we can go ahead and if you can play, whenever that video plays, you'll kind of see this in action. But so Copilot is an AI-powered bike light and camera that really focuses on road safety for cyclists. Like I said, down the line, this can likely be applied in all sorts of different mobility applications. But it's using deep learning neural networks to process data and AI to understand what exactly cars are doing. So what you'll see here is as it's sensing a vehicle behind you, it's going to be green. As it's approaching, that's kind of the next stage, it'll turn orange. And as it's overtaking the car, it's going to turn red. And what's different about this from some of the other products that are on the market right now is that it's actually constantly sensing it. So it doesn't have amnesia. It's not just, oh, there's something coming at you and it tells you one time and then it goes away. It's constantly seeing what the car's behavior is doing. And so if it starts to come too close to you, if it starts to move too fast, it's going to indicate to both the cyclist and the driver that there's a potentially dangerous situation about to happen. And that will happen with audible and visual cues. So it will beep louder as it's getting closer for the cyclist. There's also a 90 decibel alarm on the top. So that's certainly going to alert the cyclist. You know, they'll be hearing the increasing volume, but it will also likely indicate to a car. Now, given how insulated cars are now, and if someone has the radio on loud, they may also, it is going to blink brighter as well. So there is a visual indication to the driver. But you can get a sense for kind of how the technology is working here and what that's doing. There's also a companion app that goes with it. So similar to, again, other products, if you want to have that on your phone in front of you to be able to see the indications of cars coming and things like that. Some people find that distracting. Some people really like that. So it's a personal preference in terms of what you'd like to do. But because it's integrated also with the camera, you have a recording of all of your rides. We're able to kind of reconstruct if there is an incident so that you can tell how fast a car was going, how close they're coming for close calls, things like that. And then, you know, again, it's kind of compatible with things like Strava and social media and different apps like that so that you can upload all of that data and share. And I'll kind of keep it there. And then I know we have a bunch of questions to get into, so.
Yeah. So before we get into our questions, I have a question for y'all. Who has a 311 system in their city or a 311? I'm just kind of curious who we're talking to. Okay, do people tend to use it as like a tool, like, you know, or is it useful? Is your city? I'm just kind of looking for some head nods and thumbs up or thumbs down. Okay, just curious. Okay, thanks. That provided some info. We found it in Pittsburgh actually really useful for a lot of different reasons. You know, everything from getting a pothole filled to you know, these spots, like these really problematic spots, to even ours. You can even load where you had a near miss, for instance. And so we've often used it as an organizing tool on some level to where we've had days where there's like we'll have like a 311 blitz day, and it's actually a pretty effective way to get people out using it and helping, you know, bring more change to your city. So with that said, one of the things, Armin, about your app that I find really unique and powerful is the ability to provide like a point of view perspective on how parking in a bike lane affects someone riding a bike. How effective do you think this has been for demonstrating the problem of decision makers?
Yeah, I think the difference between this and like other data collections that are just cameras that, you know, watch a curb and report back is that every single report was a personal experience, right? Like I had to go around this pothole, I had to go around this parked car. And I think it just tells a different story when every one of those data points is not just data for data's sake, but somebody saying, I felt unsafe on Pittsburgh's bike infrastructure. And I think that makes it a little more compelling than just data for data's sake.
Yeah, one of the things about your app is, at least previously, every time someone would submit, it would go to Twitter, and it was just like all day seeing these things, like all these problems happening, and it affected me personally. But I'm curious, do you think do you think it has a negative effect on scaring people from riding in general?
I hope not. I mean, I have a separate Twitter account for all the 311 reports, and they all go to Dashcam 311 instead of Dashcam Bikes. So the people who follow it are not the main audience. And I did that intentionally because I don't want biking to seem super unsafe, right? I don't want all people to be seeing is the negativity. And there's like a ton of great things that you can share with dashcam footage as well. So like 2 days ago, it was foggy Sunday night, I think Sunday, maybe Saturday. And I was biking towards the Capitol, and the Capitol building just appears out of the fog. And I was like, oh, that was really cool. And then I turn around, and then Washington's monument appears out of the fog. And I was like, this is amazing. You just see a glow, and it just goes up into the distance. And so I posted that ride. And like, there's all these cool things that you get to experience on a bicycle. And I think it's important to also share those stories, not just the 311 negative experiences.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, as Armin mentioned earlier, that bike lane that was featured in the video is Penn Avenue in downtown Pittsburgh. And it was one of the first protected bike lanes in the city. We're really proud of it, but we've also been trying, as soon as it was installed, people started parking in it. And so since then, for about 10 years, we've been trying to quote unquote harden the bike lanes. And every year, we make requests, we do everything. And I truly do think that this year, due to the amount of exposure that your app made, really did help bring it over the edge to actually getting the funding this year. It's still not fully protected. They're planning to do it this year, but it was kind of a big deal, especially for such a resource limited city like Pittsburgh. So have you seen other uses of your app besides like parking in the bike lane issue?
Yeah, so I mean, the thing is like 311 sucks in basically every city. I was in New Orleans with David, and you have to enter an address, but if there's not an address near where you're reporting, you just can't do it. Whereas our app, what it does is it finds your GPS location and automatically detects the nearest address and sends that. So we've actually seen drivers using it for reporting potholes too, which is not the intent, but that's fine. And certainly pedestrians, like it's not a great experience as a pedestrian because it's not designed to just take a photo and send. It's designed to, record for many minutes and then find your GPS location. But there's been a lot of requests from pedestrians, like, can I just take a photo with your app and use the same mechanism? So I think, there's this desire to have better communication with cities. And whether it's this app or cities seeing it and creating their own version for everybody, I think the population, at least in Pittsburgh, has that need to talk more easily to their city without going through a cumbersome form.
So can pedestrians use your app, just to clarify?
They do, but it's not the best experience. You need to take a 5-second video, and like just because that's how long it takes to lock in a precise GPS location. Mm-hmm. And pedestrians find that annoying because they're like, why do I have to take a 5-second video of a pothole?
Yeah. I'm curious, like, because you've helped submit, like, I don't know how many, hundreds upon hundreds of 311s to the city. I'm curious.
2,000.
There you go. 2,000 311s to the city. Curious if you can talk a little bit on, on your relationship with the city and some challenges you've had working with them.
Yeah. So the way 311 works is they're a department that passes your request on to different departments. And so 311 is great. I'm great friends with the folks at 311. Because something they've said is that people are less mean to them when they make a 311 report. The app just gives you a cookie cutter, here's what happened. And previously people would like be yelling and cursing like, why the hell haven't you fixed this? And so 311 is happy that there's like just less ire in the world. The departments that receive the requests have mixed results. So something that was reported a few days ago or a few weeks ago maybe was there was cars cannot continue straight, but bikes could, but there was no sign saying bikes could continue straight. It was saying all traffic must turn right. And so somebody made a 311 request through the app saying, can you please put a sign saying accept bikes? And 48 hours later, the sign was up. So some departments just phenomenal. Other departments, for some reason, cars parked in bike lanes goes to the police department. We don't want police to be handling these issues. We think it should be parking authority. We don't need armed enforcement dealing with traffic issues. But for some reason, police keep getting it and they get very angry. Sometimes they write in all caps saying, stop this. And so, I don't know. It's a luck of the draw.
I mean, with that said, I remember when that happened and, the police wrote in all caps, it's not, what would they say? It was like, stop reporting these. This isn't illegal or something like that. And so it was an educational moment where using our connections with the police department to then go to their superior and be like, look, this is not correct. Your officers are saying incorrect information to the public. And so it actually turned into a learning experience for the police department, for what that's worth. Thanks. We'll get some more questions, but I'm going to turn it over to Alison now. Can you talk about the unique features of Copilot and how the product's different from Garmin and other similar products?
Yeah, so our products surpass the capabilities of existing options like radar-based tools and camera-based tools, really because of the integration of intelligent sensors and algorithms from autonomous vehicles. And so, for example, the Garmin Varia uses a radar with a high field of vision, so it's about a 90 to 100 degree cone of what it can see. But it basically can tell you whether something metal is coming at you. Other than that, it's not giving you a whole lot of information. And what Copilot can do is it can tell you if something is coming straight at you, if something is moving in parallel to you, but at a safe distance. For example, if you're riding next to the bike lane, in Pittsburgh, the Varia is just lighting up, even though you're in a completely protected space because there are just buses flying past you. We can tell that there is a differentiated lane, and so it wouldn't ping for any reason because it knows that you're in a protected space. Similarly, if there are other bicyclists riding behind you with the Varia, it will tell you something's coming behind you, whereas we can identify this is a pedestrian, this is a cyclist, this is a car. So that distinction between what the different actors are on the road helps establish, a pretty significant intelligent advantage with the Copilot product. And from a comparative price point, even with an embedded AI chip and significant intelligence, we're able to remain competitively priced to a lot of the existing products on the market.
Nice. Who do you envision as your primary customers, and is the product for sale yet?
It is not for sale yet. In fact, Ken, if it's not a pain to pull that slide up, I forgot I had one other community slide in here. So we mainly see this as people who are, riding in urban environments where there are cars around, though there was a lot of conversation this morning about riding in rural environments. If you're on a road where there aren't a lot of cars, it's certainly nice to be alerted when there is a car coming from behind you. But we have had a badass community of winter warriors biking through Pittsburgh this winter with these big prototypes on their bikes, collecting data for us and helping us train the algorithms so that we can have the best models to use for the product. And so, we really see this as people who are commuting daily, who are on the roads, people who are, concerned about family and friends who are out on the roads, but anyone who really wants to have better intelligence in terms of largely what's coming up behind them.
Well, one thing that's really impressed me about, the launch of your product is that they've really built a community of beta testers around this, and there's a Slack channel, people sharing their rides and tagging it. And I don't know, it's kind of cool to see that, all these kind of nerdy people who are really into this thing. And so I'm wondering if you can give some real world stories or feedback from the Copilot testers that have been helping out.
I think what's been interesting and specifically for us is we've had engineers who have said, oh, have you thought about this from a hardware perspective, or maybe I could. We had someone build a custom strut in their workshop in the basement for the prototype because they said, it's cantilevering a little bit, which won't be an issue with the commercial product. So he built a strut. And then we have people who aren't technical at all, who are also giving us really fantastic feedback from a UX UI perspective of, this would be a great addition for us to make. And so, I didn't answer your question right before that either about is it for sale, so I'll go back to that. We will be launching our first commercial product this summer, and we will also likely have some pre-sale going on hopefully late this spring. And so if you go on our website in its current form, you will see lots of photos of the prototype version. In about the next 2 weeks, we'll be launching a new website with a pre-sale with all the updated information about the commercial product that we'll be launching.
Cool, thanks. I know Clark, he's, the founder, he's a cyclist, he rides a lot. I'm curious, how do you see velo.ai contributing to making our streets more bike friendly?
So, and I'll speak from personal experience. When I first took this role, I said, do I need to bike a lot to take this job? Because I was a very kind of casual biker, and a lot of it was due to the fact that I was a little bit nervous to ride on roads. I rode trails a lot, especially with my kids. I wasn't on the roads very often. And I think for us, this is really about making streets more accessible and making people feel more comfortable on the streets. You know, a lot of folks, the bike party and the critical mass, and we were just in that session talking about kind of different ways to make people gain confidence on the roads. And we see ourselves as just another way to help people gain confidence on the roads by having some technology and a tool that can help them feel like they can stay safe. And whether that's, you know, adding a commuter or going onto roads and off of trails.
Cool, thanks. All right, this question's for both of you. So we all know that 311 is used less in underserved communities, and that everybody can afford a high-tech device for their bike. How can your products help people in communities who may not have access to this tech? We'll start this time with Armin.
Yeah, sure.
Next time, sorry.
So I think that's super important. I actually collaborated a bit with WABA here in DC to distribute 100 of these phone mounts to the communities who are not using 311 currently, which tends to be the lower income communities that have worse bicycle infrastructure just because there's fewer people advocating for it, not because there's not a need for it. And so we're trying to correct that actively by giving them this tool. DC is going to be the second city where we launch our 311 reporting. We don't want to go into every city at once. We really want to work with orgs on the ground. And so we're letting WABA lead the charge of whose voice isn't being heard, and can we give them one of the phone mounts so that they can record the rides and have their voice be heard. So, you know, with a low cost product, I think it's a little easier because people already have cell phones, right? That the barrier to entry is, do you have a smartphone? And then the cost for the phone mount is nominal.
Same question. How can your products help people in communities who may not have access to the tech?
Yeah, so one of the things that we're looking to do once the commercial product launches is we're going to have, you know, 30 or 40 of these, which are perfectly capable. They're, again, a little bit bigger, but they have all the same technology. And how can we partner with local community organizations to get this technology out so that, one, it can go, we have a lot of great groups that work in underserved communities and organize rides, whether that's with local high school students who are riding after school and kind of doing bike safety and things like that, and also just community bike rides. And so how can we get these into their hands so that they can, one, get onto roads and collect data in underserved communities as well. And then we've also had some early conversations with the local bike share in Pittsburgh about how can we potentially longer term get these onto the bike share bikes so that, you know, it's really not about it. It's not about a particular neighborhood or a particular person at a particular price point being able to afford it, but it's more accessible just largely across the community.
Thanks. If possible, if we can go to any questions either from the audience or from the chat for now. We have more questions too, but let's just start with that. I saw your hand first, and then your hand second, and then your hand third.
A question regarding the Copilot. Does that actually capture videos of the approaching cars?
It does, yes. So the video is running the full time, and what it'll do is it'll eventually overwrite it, and so you can have it so it's only clipping incidents and then pulling that out. And you'll have different settings, you know, to be able to just pull out if there's something interesting or if there is an incident, so you're not going through, you know, hours of
Yeah, I think that's a
footage.
problem that some people have found with the Garmin, finding the incident that is in question. You know, you don't want to catch every car passing, you want to get the one that hit you.
Right.
Ideally.
Right.
So, but that would be possible here. I mean, that's good.
Go ahead.
Hi, I just retired from driving the bus. And so I sort of missed what you said about commercial. So because on the bus, you had mentioned a bus as well. And the crazy thing about on the bus, they don't let us have a lot of that kind of stuff. So why are you calling it commercial? What do you mean?
I just meant, when we commercialize it, so when it goes out as a commercial product, as a
Okay.
consumer product.
Okay,
And-
instead of what you're doing right now.
Right, so right now, we're just in a beta testing, so it's not for sale, people can't, this product doesn't actually exist with guts in it and that's functioning, they're still tweaking all of that and getting that finalized before it'll be a consumer product for
Okay,
purchase.
all right, gotcha.
I saw you next. Yep.
Yeah, I just was trying to understand how the data flows. I love your maps and being able to see that. So do you own the data? Because you absorb the data and then pass it on to 311. So you are separately mapping? Does it belong to the cycling entity? Like how does that?
It, so when I send it to 311,
Yeah.
311 owns that data.
Right, that's been.
And then I own a little bit more than that, the data that 311 gets, and that's what you see publicly.
And you can map that.
And so I map that independent of 311. So that map is our data set. You could also go to 311 and grab the exact same data because that data becomes public once you submit it to 311.
I see.
And we can actually use gathered data in the aggregate to help inform policymaking or, infrastructure decision-making, things like that. And then similar to like a Strava where you can set, home and work and kind of have a radius where you don't want anything publicly being shared, we'll have
Yeah, but
features
was
like
one of the
that.
Things that was in my mind is like, how are you acting in Maddie is a little there to ensure privacy. That's a lot of people's personal data about where they go and when they go. So have you thought through, I'm sure you have thought through all of that, security implications of all of that.
Yeah, everything that is uploaded, everything is anonymized unless you, and we don't see any of the video footage unless you request to send it. So if you say, here's a 311 report, you are consenting to share that photo. If you don't consent to sending it, we're not gonna send it without your approval.
So it's really just a shortcut to the submission we would be making.
Yeah.
And you agree that you're gonna have access to that data to create these consolidated.
Right, and eventually we're gonna automate the detection process, but we still won't automatically submit it up. Everything's gonna be for you to review, say like, yes, I wanna submit it, or no, I don't, so that you're in full control.
But are there any questions in the chat before we go?
There are
back?
several questions in the
Okay.
chat. Try to ask some of them relatively quickly. Some of them are pretty straightforward. Can you repeat your app's name?
Dashcam for your bike. I'm not creative, but I'm great at SEO.
And just for parody, the name of your product and company.
Yeah, it's velo.ai, and that's the website as well, and the product is Copilot.
Okay, now question, I guess, for both of you. Have either of you looked into a bike share mount that could be quickly taken on and off a bike share bike?
Yes, we are sourcing 6 coming from China when I get back to Pittsburgh, and I'll be evaluating each of them. The issue is that most mounts are not designed for phones to be held like this. And so we have tested 40 mounts. We've had 2 of our own phones break because we don't want your phone to break with the mounts we test. So you can't just grab any mount that works with a quick release. Like we really test these for thousands of hours before we let the public touch them. So yes, but it'll be another 90 days before we've done that testing.
And ours would be less about the mount and more about the cost of having these on public bikes. And so I think, as we are able to get a consumer product out there and then see what we can do with the prototype versions and or see what other kind of support funding wise we could get for different partnerships. We have some initial funding from a local foundation that's really interested in the social impact side of things. And so how can we really help get these out into the community through some different funding streams is definitely on our radar.
Final question from me before you go back to the room. I have some more, but I want to make sure other people get in. Do either of your devices require continuous internet connection?
No, it does require an internet connection when you first launch it, just for various reasons. But while you're riding, it can be in airplane mode. And what a lot of people actually do is they use another phone that, is an old phone from a few years ago that's they're not using anymore. And they just mount that facing behind them. So you can like record in front of you with your main phone, and then you have like your old phone facing behind you, so you get front and back recording.
Can you quickly talk to battery life real quick while you're kind of talking about hardware?
Yeah, so I mean, one of the main things that there's this app instead of your camera app is battery life, right? If you try recording with your normal camera, it will just kill your battery within an hour, hour and a half. We can last 6 hours of recording. Hopefully you're not recording 6 hours. It's designed for commutes, and 6 hours will kill your battery. So like you don't want to do that. But we have a low power mode. So when you don't need to be recording, you just tap the screen and it turns off the recording, but it leaves it ready to start recording. And that can last up to 30 hours. So you can just leave it ready to go, and you see something dangerous about to happen, you tap, you record for the minute or two that you're in a dangerous area, and then you can turn off the recording, and you don't need to look at your phone, you don't need buttons. You just tap the screen and it's listening, waiting to start recording.
Ours does not require any kind of Wi-Fi. The battery, if the computer is running, will last between 3 and 4 hours. We're working on optimizing that to the maximum amount of battery life. If the computer is not running and it's just acting as a bike light, it should get about 7 to 8 hours with the camera. So not that you would necessarily use it for that functionality, but if you decided to, you could get a lot more battery out of it.
Thanks. Your hand went straight up, so.
Thank you. I had a question. I can't remember which one of you it was mentioned that the vehicle could implement software also by choice. Is it the vehicle also wanted to have, I think it was yours to talk about the alarm, the
So
alarm.
yes, there wouldn't be an alarm on the car, but it would indicate to the car. So there's a 90 decibel alarm on the device itself that would go off to indicate to the car. And like I said,
What's the installation on the vehicle?
not to the car. The installation is on Copilot, and it's loud enough, hopefully, that a car will hear it. But there's also visual cues. The lights will blink brighter to indicate to cars. Now, if they're texting, will they see a brighter light? I'm not sure, but yeah, that's.
See you and then you. Yep.
Question for both of you, and you were, and woman, the gentleman mentioned started on this on privacy. So can you just talk a little bit about the training data sets that is it being trained on the personal users, bikers? And also, like you mentioned a little bit about the video, that there may be some automated AI sort of detection. Is that also, what kind of privacy sort of layering and security you have consideration to that? Also.
So the initial model for this was all on public data sets. It was trained on that. And then our beta testers are actually collecting all of that data. So as part of being part of beta, all of that data is ours. They were consenting to that so that we could basically model this off of real-time bike data that's out on the streets.
So that the individual user will be customized, so if I bought that product today.
Yes.
Will my data be used to train, I guess, will be customized to me?
In the aggregate, it will not be specific to you
Gotcha.
on our end, no.
So my question is sound. So there's 90 decibels, does it ramp up or is it instantly 90? And if so, the cyclist is getting honked at for the car's bad behavior? Is that correct?
Well, it's less of, we don't like to think of it as a cyclist getting honked at. So this will give audible, you'll hear it beep. And then as a car is getting closer, it's gonna beep louder. So it's not gonna be like out of nowhere you get. There's a gradual increase.
So I'm not just gonna get a.
And you're only gonna get that 90 decibel if it's imminently there's going to be a collision. So it's very,
Tuck and roll.
yeah, it's very unlikely, hopefully, that will go off.
I'm just wondering though, I would imagine that a collision could happen from the front, from the side. So is the signal different? Like, does the biker know what to do with that information?
So it isn't a 360 degree. It does have a wider view than a radar, because that's just like, if you think about it like this, we have more vision like this, but if it's mounted on the back and you get hit from the front, it's not gonna do anything.
If I could ask my question again.
Sure.
I think that as a biker, if you're about to be hit, you want to respond quickly. But if you don't know how you're going to be hit, does this device give you a different signal?
Well, so if it's mounted in the back like this and it's facing backwards and a car is going to hit you from the front, this won't be able to see anything that's happening in the front.
Or the
side, right. So you could mount one on the front and the back, which we've seen. But yeah, it's not going, the majority of collisions and fatalities happen from getting hit from behind. So the primary place that we would assume people would put it is on the back. But yes, if you got hit from the front, this would not give any kind of indication.
But Okay, I'm not sure I articulated my question well, but thank you.
I think another part of that is that it's also trying to warn the driver, not just you. The
Right.
90 decibel alarm is
Sure.
for them. And
Yeah.
so like, what do you do is you pray that they don't
But
run
I guess
into
if you're
you.
about to be hit, there are different ways in which you would respond and try to move out of the way.
Like a right hook.
Exactly.
And when they're
Right,
coming
right,
at you,
right.
that's proceeding from behind and then, an experienced cyclist is always kind of looking, when they're going through an intersection, they're always looking over their left shoulder. And if somebody slows down, they're like starting to hit the brakes because we know there's gonna be potential for right hook.
Yeah.
So, but it doesn't seem like it would do that, because it might, you could train it to kind of go, this person's slowing down, but it doesn't see the intersection. So, yeah.
Well, I think that's an interesting point in that the app is going to indicate to you, and so how much information somebody wants in terms of what that visual looks like, I think would be interesting. We've heard some feedback that say people don't want to be looking at it on their phones because they find that distracting. And we have clearly people who would want to say like, which angle is the car coming from? Like, how could I avoid this? So, I mean, I think that's helpful feedback for us to consider in how we can show that on a visual application if people are pulling it up on their phone to decide how they can react to it.
Going to be modeling of like context switching for the cyclist now, because in my previous career, I ran a big radiology group, and these radiologists sitting in these dark rooms with big giant monitors, and if anybody bugged them, their reading rate would way down. And so we know it's true with aircraft pilots, right? Too much going on and they're confused. Cycling's very similar. We've got a lot going on, and now I've got to change focus. Has that been thought about at all, discussed in your group?
So it's funny that you say that. My husband's a radiologist, so he sits in a dark room and looks at images.
My condolences. Tell him I'm sorry about his taxes.
But yes, I mean, I think part of that is it's what people's preference is, whether or not they want to have it. So you can have it up on your phone. If you choose not to, you're still gonna have audible beeping to let you know, like, there's a car has been indicated or a car is coming closer. So there's still a cue to you that doesn't require you to look at anything if you so choose. So I think it's just a preference of the rider.
So,
There's a few more. You only have a few minutes left.
okay, I want to get, I did head nod over here, so,
Questions I'm gonna ask.
yeah.
I may have missed it, but my cell phone can record stuff. It sounds like the difference here is that your application, after I use your mount, which looks sturdy and good, is that it will eventually be able to translate that information, get it to a 311 system on somebody's. If you ever get to San Diego, that'd be great.
I grew up there.
Now, if I got your mount and use is the application available, and does that help me more than just recording what happened?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few things the application does that like your normal camera app doesn't. One is battery life. That's the main thing. It doesn't kill your battery. Two, you never need to deal with footage. So it overrides. You can choose how many hours to store. So I store 5 hours, and after 5 hours, it goes back and starts taking over.
It's not that long.
Well, so like, several days ago, right? Like you don't want to be deleting old videos every time because most videos are boring. So it does all that. It makes it easy to share to 311. It makes it gesture controlled because you can't actually aim at buttons when you're recording, when you're writing. So because you can't touch a button to start and stop recording, because you're looking at the road, the whole screen is one big button. And so you don't need to look at the screen to control the app. You can tap to start recording, you can tap to stop recording, and you don't need to aim at any buttons. And the last thing is that your normal camera app might break your phone if you try recording with it. So it's always autofocusing. And if the autofocus mechanism happens right before you hit a pothole, it could break your autofocus mechanism. So we lock all hardware in place. So unlike the normal camera app, your phone's not going to break if you try recording your bike ride. Apple actually bans motorcycles from using camera apps for that reason, because it's broken a lot of iPhones. So ours locks all the hardware in place so that you don't break your phone while you're riding and hitting potholes.
Is there a price?
The app is free. The mount is $25. And then you can subscribe for $2 a month, and I would love your subscription. It removes a watermark and stabilizes the footage a little more. On iPhone, the stabilization is really good. You can get like crisp GoPro quality footage with the stabilization on.
I looked online for dash cam for my bike and didn't find it.
Dashcam for your bike. www.dashcam.bike. Dashcam.bike is the URL.
Right.
Do we have to, are we at time?
We're at 4:30,
Okay.
which is when this is supposed to end. There are a couple questions online about how Dashcam for your bike integrates with other cameras or other apps. I feel like that might be complicated to answer. And then there's questions about how people sign up to be testers or purchase your product. But unless you have a really quick answer to
15 seconds
either
of
of those
15
questions,
seconds,
I think
sure.
we need to.
Yeah, 15 seconds. Go.
We are getting ready to ship out to other places outside of Pittsburgh to beta test, right? It's unlikely before we push out our first consumer product that we're adding any more beta testers outside of who we have identified already. But you will be able to pre-order it on our new website that will be launching in the next about 2 weeks.
Yeah, and then you can use Google Maps or Strava, whatever you want while using Dashcam. It does not integrate with other cameras, but Google Maps, the audio will still come through. So it all works fine.
Awesome. Thank you.
Cool. Thanks, everybody.